This is my Infinite Sandevistan and Insane Damage melee build. Yes, this actually still works. You can still run an Infinite Sandevistan even after update 2.0. This build is so broken that I actually decided to go out of bounds off the side of the map to test it. And yes, it does also fight max tack. It can take literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of shots. It cannot die. It's basically an immortal build, and it stays in Sandevistan for most of the time, depending on if you can keep the uptime up. But this build 100% works. And this build can easily carry you through all content in the game. Even on very hard, max tech cannot touch you. They can't do anything to you. I'll be leaving timestamps down on the bar, and you guys can skip to whatever parts you'd like to see. But for now, we're going to start off with the Cyberware. So yes, this build is running full Cyberware slots. I know this might be controversial, but there's a reason why we're running all full Cyberware slots, and you will see why. So for my operating system, I'm running the Militech Apogi Sandevistan. This is currently the best Sandevistan in the game. Also, yes, all my stuff is leveled up tier 5+, but it's strong even if you don't have enough crafting components to get it that far. It really doesn't make a difference. For my face cybernetics, I'm running basic Kiroshi optics. Now, there is a reason why I'm running basics, because I know a lot of people want to run more fancy, pricey, expensive ones. You need to have these in your slot. Just trust me, they work. Next up, we have Tattoo Together Forever. Now, if you didn't want to run this, you could honestly run the Tiger Claws dermal imprint or the Baphomet tattoo that you get from Johnny. Either way, you need to have a tattoo in this place. You're going to be running the Ballistic Core Processor. No, you're not going to be using this as a part of the build, but once again, it is to fill a slot in this build. Now, I know that you might be having questions as to why we're filling so many slots, so I will quickly answer your question. Now, they added a new perk under the technical ability tree called Cyborg. What this does is it reduces the cooldown of all Cyberware by 15% as long as all Cyberware slots are filled. That's the reason why we're running cheap Cyberware to fill face and hands and etc. is so that way all Cyberware gets filled, and then the Cyberware that we do have, we have plenty of points to work with. Next, we're going to be running Blood Pump. The reason why we're running Blood Pump is that it procs adrenaline, which basically puts you in God mode, and it's also pretty much your oh shit button. Whenever you're going to die or take damage, you pop this and you are basically unkillable, and it regens insanely fast because all Cyberware cooldown has a 15% cooldown, and I have some other things in this build that also reduce the cooldown of it. So you basically just infinitely pop Blood Pump over and over again, constantly getting health back. On top of this, we're running health on kill. The reason why is because every single time that you get a kill, you're gaining 7.25% health back. So you have the Blood Pump that you can basically just spam to death. You have Heal on Kill, which constantly gives you health off of kills. And we're also going to be running a perk that also gives you health off of kill. Next, we're running Micro Rotors. This is best in slot just for the melee attack damage. I'm running a Katana on this build. I do believe that Katanas is the best melee weapon in this game as of right now, and you will see why. For the legs, you can honestly run any legs. I'm running Jenkins tendons just because I like that increased sprint speed, but you genuinely could run any leg Cyberware here and it wouldn't make a difference. Next, you're going to be running subdermal armor. Once again, this is just to fill up a slot because we need to have all of our cyber slots filled up. And that goes the same thing for your proxy shield. This is also basically just filling a slot. Now, these do help, as these do reduce damage and increase your armor. That's the reason why I chose these over basically all the others. So when I say it's just to fill a slot, these still serve a purpose. Don't think that you're wasting money. They all reduce damage taken, which overall helps. Now we're on to one of the best new Cyberwares that they've added to the game, Painducer. Now, a lot of people are going to be questioning why you should be running Painducer over Pain Editor, and the reason why is very simple. It's because Painducer not only is cheaper for your Cyberware, so you're able to hit Cyberware capacity without going over, but on top of this, Pain Editor, yes, it does negate all damage by 7%, which is extremely good, and if I could run it on this build, I would, but Painducer converts 30% of all damage that you take into damage over time. So on top of you having constant, consistent heals, most of the damage that you're taking slowly builds up over time. So you're pretty much never in danger when you have this on. And the fact that it's 24 instead of 28 means that we can slot it no problem. So yes, you want to go the Painducer route. Do not go Pain Editor. Next, we're running Stabber. Stabber is just great because it gives you critical chance. It's awesome. There's no reason you shouldn't be running it. Reflex Tuner. Reflex Tuner is really good because First off, you should never even drop to 25% health on this build. And if you did drop to 25% health on this build, as soon as you hit 25%, you're going to get slowed for 4 seconds. And by that time, you should realize, oh, I need to pop my blood pump. So you'll go right back up in health, no problem. But really, you should never hit 25% health anyway. Next up, you have Neofiber. Once again, just filling a slot, but the mitigation and mitigation strength is very nice. So it's not bad. For Skeleton, we're running Dense Marrow. Dense Marrow is a must. Come on, 27% melee damage. It's too good to not use. Then we also have Parabellum. Just the overall increase in armor is nice, and it doesn't take up too many slot points, so it's a good slottable. We're running Spring Joints, and Spring Joints is just really nice, once again, for that mitigation strength. Mitigation actually works really well, and I know a lot of people may be wondering, why are we not running Optical Camo? And that's because Optical Camo now has a 50-second cooldown, I believe, which is ridiculous. So a majority of the time that you have Optical Camo, you're not even really going to be able to use it. So I would rather have things that are negating damage on me than have a camo that I can pop every 50 seconds. But once again, it's up to you guys. It could possibly work because we do have a lot of Cyberware cooldown on this build to make it function. So if you wanted to go the optical camo route, you probably could. You just have to switch some things around. Next up, we're running the thermal projectile launch system. And I know this one is very, very, very weird, but I promise there is a reason why we are running this over Gorilla Arms, because I know Gorilla Arms for the longest time has been the best arm cyberware for melee. Unless you were going for a Mantis Blade build, you usually wanted to stick to Gorilla Arms for the extra body stat. But thermal projectile launch system is really, really, really good in this update, and you'll see why. Next up, we're running Mechatronic Core, 37% damage against drones, robots, mechs, and turrets. This is a must-have. The tankiest enemies in the game basically get shredded like paper. There's no reason to not run this. Next up, we're running Newton Module. This is currently, I would consider, meta. Every single time that you gain a kill, you're getting cooldown for all cyberware. And this stacks because when you run a Pogi Sandevistan, every time that you get a kill, you're extending the duration of your Sandevistan by 20%. So the more kills you get, the longer you stay in your Sandevistan, and then the more kills that you get, you keep getting cooldown off of Newton Module. So you need to make sure that you have this. This is a priority. And self-ice. Honestly, there was nothing else that we really could put for the frontal cortex. And being able to negate an enemy quick hack is very nice, especially when you're going up against max hack or neck runners. They basically can't do anything to you. And the cooldown of 45 seconds, that's not actually 45 seconds. Let me remind you that the cooldown for this build constantly brings the cooldown of all cyberware, so it's not actually 45 seconds. It's a lot shorter than that. Now for our attribute points, you're going to want 20 technical, 20 reflexes, 20 body, and 8 cool. Now, cool got completely gutted. It's not good for melee builds anymore unless you're going stealth. But the reason why I'm running 8 cool is because you gain 1.25% crit chance for each attribute point. So it's a nice little passive that you can have just by putting all the rest of your points in there. Intelligence is totally useless on this build. You don't need it whatsoever. So for body, we're going to start off with body because I know a lot of people are confused as to why a katana build is running body. So like I said before, cool got nerfed when it comes to bladed weapons. So there's really no reason to run it if you're doing an out loud melee build. So you actually want to spec into body, and body actually is really, really good now. So you want to start off by buying Painkiller, Speed Junkie, Army of One, Combat Kid, and Dwarf Head. All of these basically give you a massive amount of heals, and Dwarf Head actually procs off of Blood Pump Cyberware, which is something that we are running, so it's a win-win. Now we're going to be running Adrenaline Rush. This also is what makes Blood Pump so strong. It's really, really, really good. This basically gives you insane amounts of health, and it's also really good at healing as it regenerates over time. Calm Mind is insanely good just for the adrenaline rush. Anything that boosts adrenaline rush, you want to keep it up because it's going to give you constant healing. Juggernaut and Unstoppable Force, these are also just nice to have for the extra movement speed and damage. And then we're going to be running Pain to Gain, so that way we keep our adrenaline rush up as much as possible and we get more healing. So for reflexes, we're going to be going Slippery, Dash, Can't Touch This, Mad Dash, Air Dash, Aerodynamic, Tailwind. Now, you could swap all the dash abilities out for something else if you wanted to, but there's honestly nothing that you really need out of this build. So going dash just to get up closer to the gun users and net runners, I mean, I think is really useful. Of course, you could swap it out, like I said, for something else, but I'm going to stick with dashing. Now from here, you're going to go Flash and Thunderclap, Seeing Double, lead and steel, bullet deflect, bullet time, flash of steel, opportunist, blade runner, going the distance, and slaughterhouse. So Blade Runner is extremely important. And the reason why is because every single time that you hit an enemy, you have a chance to gain a finisher. And by doing that finisher, when you press square or whatever platform you're on, I'm on PlayStation, but whenever you press your execute button, you will basically deal a one-shot kill, and on top of that you will actually get 25% of your health back. And the reason why this is so overpowered is because, like I said before, we are running heal on kill, so that's an extra 7%. And by gaining that kill, you are also going to be refreshing blood pump, which gives you even more healing and over healing, as with blood pump you actually have 1.5 health bar, you have an extra health bar. Every single time that you gain a kill on this build, you are basically going to go fully back up to full health. And if you don't, you have blood pump to get you there. And what's beautiful about Blade Runner is that it actually procs off of Slaughterhouse. So as long as you are running a blade build, all attacks that you basically do with your blade have a chance to apply bleed. And then by applying bleed, Opportunist will proc, and then you can basically get nonstop finishers off of basically just attacking the enemy like normal. And by getting more finishers, you get more healing. So you guys are already seeing the busted part of this build, is that you basically have infinite cooldown off of the reflexes tree. So the last but not least, we have the technical ability tree, and we're going to be running Chipware Connoisseur. And the reason why you run this is because you want to have this so that way you can upgrade all of your cyberware. And then once all of your cyberware is upgraded to tier plus, then you can honestly get rid of this. You don't need it anymore. So pick this up if you don't have upgraded cyberware. If you do, ignore this perk. Now we're going to be starting off with all things cyber, Chrome Constitution, Resonance Punk, and driver update. All of this stuff basically just gives you cooldown. You can read it for yourself. License to Chrome, extended warranty, ambidextrous, and cyborg. This is also basically giving you guys cooldown, and it's also allowing us to slot in all of our cyberware, which then basically doesn't stop proccing over and over and over again because of all the cooldown stuff that we have on our build. Then we're going to be running Edge Runner. This is a must because, like I said before, you have to have all cyberware slotted in order to get the cyborg perk. So having Edge Runner, you literally have to have this if you are going to be making this build. Now, here's where the build gets a little weird, and you guys might be questioning it, but I promise it works. So we're going to be running Glutton for War, Health Freak, Borrowed Time, Field Medic, Pyromaniac, Heat Shield, Burn This City, Friendlier Fire, Doom Launcher, Ambidextrous, and Ticking Time Bomb. Now, the reason why we are running this stuff is for anything that procs the Doom Launcher perk. Now, the reason why is because, like I said before, we are not running Gorilla Arms. We are running the projectile launch system. Now, the reason why we're running the projectile launch system, and specifically the thermal one, is because every single time that you hit someone, you have a chance to apply flame damage. Now, with the new katana that they just recently added called Errata, this guarantees critical damage as long as the target that you're fighting is on fire. And this does not just affect the katana damage, it affects all damage that that target takes, including fire ticks. So as long as that target is on fire, the fire will constantly be doing critical damage. And then on top of this, your katana, every single time that you hit them, will be doing critical damage. And on top of that, you also have bleed being applied to you because you are spec'd into the reflexes tree and you're running Slaughterhouse, which also procs critical damage. So they're taking critical bleed, critical fire, and critical off your sword. And of course, you're getting constant healing off of every single person that you kill. And with the thermal projectile launch system, you can basically spread fire pretty much everywhere off of 2 button pushes. Even on max tac groups, they jump in on 4-mans. You can see on the screen, you pressed it one time, apply fire damage to all of them. You could even press it again just in case. That's a 60% flame chance. And keep in mind that your katana also has a flame chance just by hitting them. So even if you get unlucky out of that 60% burn chance and they don't get burnt, just by hitting them 1 or 2 times with the katana, they will end up getting burnt. Now, here's where the controversial part of my build may come in, but I promise you guys it works. There's footage in this video of it working, and that would be speccing into the Pyromania tree. Now, Pyromania is extremely good, especially for a melee build. So this by default automatically instantly recharges health items after neutralizing an enemy. Keep in mind that the blood pump that you have in your cyberware counts as a health item, and that blood pump pops your adrenaline, which therefore makes you basically in god mode. So as long as you are running Glutton of War, Health Freak, and Pyromania, you are basically permanently with adrenaline on. And if you don't have adrenaline on, then you can be using your blood pump to heal. Now, on top of this, you're going to be running First Aid. Now, First Aid also increases the recharge speed for your health items, which means your blood pump. So your blood pump has an even faster cooldown time. Keep in mind, blood pump has 3 uses and it cools down per use. So you can basically constantly spam this thing over and over and over again. Genuinely, you don't even need the blood pump. You honestly don't need it. But if you ever did need it, you can pop it and it works. On top of this, you're going to be running Borrow Time for the more recharge time on healing items for blood pump, friendlier fire, just extra resistances. Now, for Pyromania, the reason why this is so important, it just gives you a ton of recharge speed on your blood pump and your projectile launch system. It also increases the range of your projectile launch system, which means that more enemies are getting set on fire the more that you spam it, and you're getting increased movement speed, which is also pretty nice because you're a melee build. You're also gaining mitigation chance, so you're basically taking less damage. And you're gaining Burn This City, and yes, Burn This City does in fact proc with Doom Launcher. Every single time that you gain Pyromania, you basically replenish a grenade, which means that you can spam your Doom Launcher over and over again and keep applying flame damage. And then, for last but not least, we're running Ticking Time Bomb. This is just a nice explosion that comes out and damages enemies every single time that you use your Sandevistan. It's really nice, and it also reduces the damage that you take. So it's basically an AoE damage dealer, and it takes your damage away, which is extremely nice. So you basically have 100% uptime on critical damage as long as they are on fire. And keep in mind that you are running an incendiary thermal grenade launcher in your wrist. So you can basically just spam fire all over the place, light all the enemies on fire, and then just constantly deal critical damage. As long as you're executing enemies, you're getting 25% health back. And on top of that, you're running heal on kill. That's another 7% on health back. And if you're wondering about stamina sustain and us running out of stamina, yeah, that can't actually happen either, because under your reflexes tree, the slaughterhouse perk actually gives you stamina back for dismembering enemies, which happens basically while you just keep playing. So for the most part, with this build, you have movement, stamina sustain, infinite Sandevistan, insanely high critical damage, burn damage, bleed damage. You can also do range with your grenade launcher, and you do mass AoE damage with your EMP and your grenade launcher. I will leave you guys with some gameplay. Once again, this gameplay was recorded on very hard, and I am making max tac look like they are absolutely nothing. Try this build out for yourself. It works very, very, very well. It may take you a while to fully build it up, but I promise it is worth it in the end, as you can basically destroy everything in this game with this build. And this is a 2.0 build. So, after the Infinite Sandevistan got nerfed, I'm sure a lot of us Katana and Blade and Mantis Blade users are looking for a new way to proc Infinite Sandevistan, and I think I may have found it. And in the times where you cannot keep your uptime with the Sandevistan, because like I said, you have to be killing to keep it up, but the times that you are not getting kills to keep it up, you have Blood Pump and you have a ton of healing and mitigation, so you really cannot die. I mean, if you die on this build, it is genuinely your fault. I'm getting shot by literally 10 turrets here with max tac and like 50 soldiers all shooting me at the same time, and I'm not dying on very hard. So if you die on this build, it's not the build. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. I'm sure that this build will probably get better after Phantom Liberty's initial release date, but I wanted to make this build so I can actually play through the DLC. And then once I figure out some new mechanics when the DLC drops, maybe this build will change. But as of right now, I am thoroughly convinced that this is the best melee build in the game, especially for a Sandevistan user.